This is the Untold Italy travel podcast, and you are listening to episode number 232.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week, your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao, welcome and great to have you here, friends. I'm curious, have you been to Milan and what did you think? I love this city and its clash of old and new Italy. Its design focus and flair and vibe and wonderful coffee and cocktail bars. I've said it before, but I think Italy is at its most thrilling best when you see the respect for tradition juxtaposed with innovation, and you definitely find that in Milan. Out of all the cities in Italy, I feel like it seems to be the most international in that there's a mix of cultures and exciting innovations and more a modern vibe. And it makes an exciting contrast to some of the other Italian cities where you're steeped in Renaissance or ancient history. So it's really wonderful to be chatting about Milan today. And I'm so thrilled to welcome onto the show a friend, Inge de Boer, who I met way back in 2016, I think it was, when I was writing my food travel blog. Inge took me on a really fun food tour of Milan and introduced me to a pretty amazing chocolate shop called Zany that I've been dreaming of and seeking out ever since. Imagine my excitement when my coffee came with a perfectly wrapped square of Zany chocolate one of the days that we spent in the Dolomites last year. I was so excited. Inge and I reconnected recently, and it was so great to catch up with her and hear all about what she's been up to, including contributing to a fun online city game and writing guidebooks. I'm going to let her introduce herself in her own words, though, so let's welcome her onto the show. Benvenuta, Inge. Welcome onto the Untold Italy podcast.
Thank you, Katy. Thanks for having me here on this great podcast.
Oh, I am so excited to have you here, and I can hardly believe that we were having a delicious risotto-style lunch just a few weeks ago, and now we are here on the opposite sides of the world getting ready to chat about wonderful Milano. But before we get started, I'd love for you to share about who you are, your background, and how you came to be living in Milan and what you do there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, apart from meeting 2 weeks ago, we already met a few years ago, actually, when I just moved to Milan, because I moved there in 2012. I am originally from the Netherlands. I studied there, graduated there. But then at some point, my husband and I, we decided it was time for a year abroad, and we ended up in Milan, mainly because of the World Exhibition, which happened here in 2015. After that great experience working in an Italian company, which has its upside and downsides, I actually decided to start to work as a freelancer, and I started to propose different tours through the city of Milan. When we met, I was mainly proposing a Old Milano food tour, which was really exciting, but on the other hand, also a little bit hard to organize because of the collaboration with the local entrepreneurs. I changed. I still am organizing tours through the city of Milan, but now I'm focusing more on more general tours related to an introduction to the city of Milan, but also more focused on architecture, but because actually I graduated as an architect. So that's my background. Besides that, I also wrote 2 travel guides, one for Milan and one for Lake Como. In Dutch, unfortunately, so probably not many of your audience can read this, but it was really exciting way to get to know more about my city, Milan, because I now call it my hometown, and also Lake Como, which is so nearby and which I really like to spend some time on during the weekends.
It's really lovely. And you've also worked on an app, haven't you?
Well, it's not really an app. It's a self-guided city game. I think this is what you are referring to. It's called Secret City Trails. You play it actually in your web browser, and it's a really nice way for last-minute fun activity through the city of Milan, but also Como and Bellagio, a beautiful village on Lake Como as well.
She's a very clever lady, this one. And you do you can do your tours in English as well as Dutch, right?
Yeah, Dutch is my main focus, but I'm also capable of doing the tours in English, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Your English is perfect. And
Thank you, Katy.
I think it would be really amazing to do a tour, an architectural tour of Milan with someone who knows a lot about architecture, because it is actually very interesting thanks to the older style architecture, but also the new architecture that's there. There's some really amazing buildings. And one of the things I love about Milan is it's really got a really strong design focus. And it's where you see the best of the old and the new coming together in Italy. It's really fun, I think.
Yeah, that's another reason why Milan is such a particular city, but also an interesting city, definitely compared to other Italian cities, because it has some really important contemporary architecture and big developments also. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I really like the, is it Bosco Reale? Is that the one?
It's, of course, a beautiful Bosco Verticale, which is the vertical forest by Stefano Boeri, and it's a whole area around this building as well. But then you also have City Life, which has three contemporary office towers and also some residential buildings, all designed by star architects like Zaha Hadid and Daniel Libeskind, so are also world-famous architects actually getting some commissions in the city of Milan.
Yeah, I just love how the city has really sort of embrace that design heritage and taking it forward into the future, because, you know, sometimes some travellers say they're a little bit disappointed with Milan after they visit Rome, Florence and Venice. And I don't know if you get that impression, but for me, I think that it's because maybe they're expecting the old world or the older architecture, and they come to Milan and, you know, it's a little bit different. What do you think?
That's true, and I completely agree. And I also get this feedback from my clients. People come to the city of Milan without any expectations, or maybe they have some expectations because other people told them that there's not much to see apart from the Duomo, the Galleria, and the Castello, and shopping, of course. In a way, maybe it's true, or maybe it's not true, but it's more difficult to understand the city of Milan compared to other Italian cities. And it has different reasons. First of all, because Milan always has been a very wealthy city. They always have been very rich, close to the Alps. So it was easy to get in touch with northern parts of Europe, and they were also trading a lot with them. They never had trouble demolishing old buildings and constructing new ones in order to remain up to date with the rest of the world. And then on the second hand, the city has been bombed a lot during the Second World War, meaning that after the Second World War, there have been lots of reconstructions of buildings, but also densification in the city. So we have less squares, for example, because after the Second World War, the municipality decided to construct buildings high-rise on these squares. Of course, don't expect a big high-rise city. It's not like a metropole like New York or Bombay or anything like that. But still, compared to other cities, Milan is different, and it's more complicated to understand where you have to go. So you really have to prepare yourself, buy a travel guide or take a tour with a guide who can show you what are the nice places in the city, and also maybe explain you the story behind it, because often also this helps you to better understand the city. And I don't say this because I want to make publicity for myself, but I think it gives you a better idea of the city of Milan.
It's difficult to get a real taste of a place unless you're there with a local, whether that's a friend or a guide or someone that can, you know, navigate you around and share some of the really amazing spots. And I think that's really one of the motivations behind this podcast, is to really get locals on board to tell us about what there is to do and see that's really special about their city. And, you know, when we reconnected, I was so thrilled because, you know, there was one particular place, and I told you this the other week, that you took me to, and I can't stop thinking about it, this chocolate shop, Zany. I loved it. I loved the whole design. I loved the taste of the chocolate. I loved their big espresso machine, their vintage one. I just loved everything about it. And I think, you know, that's one of the really cool things about Milan, you know. And there's some more famous places, I guess, you know, everyone knows the Duomo and the Galleria and the Last Supper. and maybe the castle, maybe.
Exactly.
But there's so many more things to do and see in Milan. So why don't you share some of your favourites with our listeners?
Well, I think first of all, what not many people know is that Milan has lots of museums and they are really diverse between each other. So you have, for example, it's called Casa Museo in Italian, meaning house museum. So often these are houses which belong to wealthy Milanese people. They are decorated in a very, very beautiful way, very detailed, and they now have been open to the public, so you can visit them and maybe see also their art collection, which is very particular. One of them is Paul di Pezzoli, which is very close to the Scala Opera House, just a few stops away. And also in this same area, in the Quadrilatero della Moda, so the fashion neighborhood, it's called Bagatti Valsecchi. Two beautiful Casa Museum. Then on the other end, if you prefer contemporary art, there's also lots of options. You can, of course, go to the Triennale Design Museum, where they focus mainly on design. Another similar museum, it's called Adi Design Museum, where they display the winners of the Compasso d'Oro, which is a very famous design prize from Italy. And there you can see everything from ball pens to Ferraris, from huge boats to, I don't know, door handles, for example. So it's completely everything you might need during the day as like industrial design. You can see there. And this is a very new museum. But also we have the beautiful Fondazione Prada. And I must be a little bit proud on this one because it's designed by a Dutch architect, Rem Koolhaas, and his studio OMA. It's actually the refurbishment of an old distillery, and he also added some buildings. And this is housing the contemporary art collection of the Prada family, and it organizes contemporary exhibitions as well on mainly contemporary art.
There's a famous cafe there too, isn't there?
That's true. This is already the cafe or the architecture is worth a visit, even when you don't visit the museum itself. There's a famous cafe there, and it's designed by Wes Anderson, which is a famous director. Yeah, definitely have a coffee there at least. And I suggest also a cake.
Is the coffee good?
The coffee is good, and also their cakes. Very sweet, but you can't get them anywhere else in Milan. So have a break there, definitely.
Oh, yeah. I think it's really one for people that are big fans of Wes Anderson or anyone really that loves design. And this is the best thing about Milan. You know, these people take for granted what it takes to design something simple that we use in everyday life. But actually, there's been a lot of amazing innovations that come out of Italy. I had a boss who sadly passed away now, but he used to work for Olivetti. And this is the best example that I could give, was that they made typewriters, for those who don't know. And for all of you younger listeners who don't know what a typewriter is, oh my gosh, it's a keyboard where you punched in letters and paper came out. I don't know if I've described it properly.
It's a kind of integration of a keyboard and a printer.
Yeah. Anyway, but he told me that Olivetti had built a hotel or an office that was in the shape of the typewriter, which this is what I love about Italians. Why not? If you're going to do it, go big and go large and do it properly.
They go into the details. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so many like exciting museums. I'd love to go and see that design one. What else can you tell us?
Well, if I move away from the museums, because I just give you a short impression, but there's many, many more to visit. Also visit definitely the Pinacoteca di Brera or the Pinacoteca Ambrosiana, where they have beautiful collections of historical paintings from the 13th century onwards, of also the well-known painters from Italy like Caravaggio, Tintoretto, Raphael. So if you are an art lover, you have to go there.
And sorry to interrupt, there's no one there.
Exactly.
It's not like the Uffizi Gallery where you're like squashed into everyone else. You can go and see these amazing pieces of art with very few other people.
Well, actually, now we're talking about the Pinacoteca di Brera, very close by. There's also an Orto Botanico, so a botanical garden. It's part of the same complex. You can visit this also 6 days a week, so not on Sundays, and it's free entrance. It's a very tiny botanical garden, but it shows you very well that Milan is also a very green city, because also in many people's minds, Milan is grey, dirty, lots of traffic, etc. But still we have lots of green. This green used to be part of the convents that used to be in the historical center of the city of Milan. And they used these gardens, amongst others, for growing food for the inhabitants of the convents, but also poorer people of the city of Milan. They grew medicinal herbs in order to make people more healthy. And they used to grow grapes for winemaking. This is not very positive. Well, it's a positive story, but the wine wasn't that good. Because wine at some point, or for a long time actually, used to be the only way to quench your thirst. People didn't have any access to drinking water, so they just drank wine, also the children. But it was disgusting. It was very dry. It was not nice to drink. But anyways, they grew it in those gardens of the convents. The botanical garden is really worth a visit, also just for a 10-minute break of the chaos of the Italian city of Milan. What also not many people know is that besides the Duomo, there's many, many other churches you can visit in Milan, which are definitely worth a visit. We have quite a lot historical churches constructed from the 4th, 5th century, so 1500 years in age. And one very beautiful church is the San Maurizio al Monastero Maggiore. And its nickname is the Sistine Chapel of Milan because of all the decorations in the interior. Have you been there, Katy?
I haven't. I'm really intrigued now.
I'm trying to give you a next reason to come back to the city of Milan, as you can imagine. It's not that well known. It's not far from the Last Supper and also not far from the castle in Milan. And in the inside, it has many decorations done by Bernardino Luini and his sons. And Bernardino Luini was a student of Leonardo da Vinci. So actually quite an important painter who was known mainly locally. Unfortunately, he didn't get any world fame like Leonardo da Vinci did, but locally he did some very important works.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's really interesting because I feel like in the past Milan was a little bit self-contained. Like unlike, the Medici in Florence that like to spread out all over. And it seems like the Milanese like to keep themselves in Milan and, keeping to themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I think they had other things to worry about because when the Medici were ruling in Florence, we here had the Visconti and the Sforza family, and they tried to compete also with the Medici, but there was like the mountains in between, so it was not an easy job to do. And then the Milanese people more had to worry about the people coming from the northern parts of Europe, so Austria, Switzerland, France, etc. Actually, Milan has also been occupied by the Austrians, the French people, and the Spanish people. So we had lots of influence from foreigners as well.
It's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. But it's so true. If you go that side of the Alps and the River Po, there's more opportunities for marauding invaders from the north.
Definitely, yeah. You're completely right about this, yeah. No, so the other thing particular about this beautiful church, the San Maurizio al Monastero Maggiore, is that it's separated in two separate parts. The first one, so when you enter as a visitor, you arrive from the street, you have the possibility to pass a small corridor or passageway, and then you get at the area dedicated to the nuns who used to live there. But the nuns were not allowed to get in touch with other people, so there was no visual connection between one part of the church and the other part of the church. It's really exciting to see this.
It might not have been exciting for them to be locked up.
That's true. But it's a few hundred years ago, luckily.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, these are really, things that are just not on normal lists about Milan for sure. What else have you got for us, Inge?
Are you getting hungry or you like a coffee?
Always, always, always.
Okay. Well, maybe then it's nice to talk a little bit about this. Because, of course, Italy has lots of traditional food. All the delicious pasta. You were already mentioning the risotto we had a few weeks ago, which is delicious. And I think the risotto is one of the things you have to try when you are in Milan, especially the risotto milanese, in which they add saffron, so it gets the beautiful yellow color. But besides the traditional dishes, in Milan, there's also lots of opportunities to have some more contemporary food. And I think also here, Milan is different than other Italian cities because also food entrepreneurs are trying to innovate in this city. So we have some really good specialty coffee bars, for example. One of them is Orso Nero, which you can find near the Porta Venezia area, which is also a nice area to visit, not known by many tourists. So definitely go there for a breakfast or maybe a dinner, because it's a nice area with lots of restaurants, bars, etc. And a little bit more famous, it's called Café Zal. And this is a Brazilian guy who moved to Milan already some time ago, and he's decided to open a specialty coffee store. And he's roasting the coffee himself. And actually, he's even selecting the beans right from the farmers in Brazil. So he really knows the origin of his products. They have 3 bars already in the city of Milan in different areas. So actually, you don't have any excuse not to go there, because it's always kind of close by your accommodation. So this is definitely also something I like to recognize to you.
So with the coffee style, so, in Australia, we are very particular about our coffee, actually, even sometimes a little bit more than Italians, not in Milan, but in the north. And Australians do like to drink a milky coffee. So we won't just drink espresso. We'll probably have like a macchiato or maybe a cafe latte, something more milky. What is the style of the coffee bars there, Café Zal? Is that like a particular one where you'd go just for an espresso, or is
Well, they actually, and that's what happens with many specialty coffee bars, they suggest you, if you are a first-time visitor, to have an espresso, and even to do not add any sugar, in order to taste the coffee in its original state. And then maybe you add 1 or 2 sips and you think, okay, it was too strong, then you're allowed, of course, to add sugar. But they suggest you to try it without the sugar. I think these coffee style bars mainly serve the traditional Italian coffee. So espresso macchiato, which is completely different than a latte macchiato, because it only has like a spot of milk in it, an espresso macchiato, or for example, a cappuccino. And in many cases, you also can order the cappuccino with vegetable milk.
like soy milk?
Soy milk, yeah. So in many cases, you can also order your cappuccino with a non-dairy milk. Yeah, so I think this is one of the differences. The other difference is that still a takeaway coffee is not something you really do in Italy. It happens, and especially after the pandemic, it became more normal that you do a takeaway coffee. But spending a few minutes in a bar is also something which is still part of the Italian culture. You have a chat with the barman, maybe you talk about the soccer game of the night before, or about your plans for the next holidays, and then you go back to your work, or you go back and do grocery shopping or whatever you was heading to. You can get your takeaway coffee, but just enjoy these 5 minutes in the bar, I think.
Maybe not mention the football this week. I had another question actually about saffron. Where does the saffron come from that they use in the Milanese?
Originally, of course, it comes from Iran and the Middle East, but it arrived in Italy, I think, in the 14th century already in Sicily, where the climate is more North African, so it was able to grow it. And now there are actually even some young producers in the Milan area. Really working in the initial phase, because they really have to do the research, understand what type of saffron is growing in this climate, because we have a more cold, humid climate compared to where the saffron is coming from. But yeah, they can grow it here. There are, of course, people saying that the saffron grown in this area in northern Italy is disgusting. They prefer the saffron coming from warmer areas, yeah.
So why are they using the saffron? So what made them put that in the risotto?
Well, that's a really romantic legend about this story, which is probably not true. But it says that there used to be a Flemish painter working on the stained glass of the Duomo. And he had a student, and this student was adding saffron to all the paint in order to get it more bright colors. Then the daughter of his master or his teacher was getting married. And they were having risotto as one of the dishes during the dinner. And then the student decided to give a present to the daughter of his teacher and add saffron to all the risotto. In this way, it got this beautiful yellow or golden golden color, which of course stands for a happy life. Probably this is a very beautiful legend, but probably it's not true.
Aww.
Because they think saffron in risotto was only introduced a couple of centuries after they finished the stained glass of the Duomo. But it's a nice legend, though.
Yeah, let's not get facts in the way of a good story.
Exactly.
Wow, okay, we've had our coffee, so I'm hungry now. What can we eat? I know you have the best recommendations. She really does.
Well, maybe it's nice to get a little bit out of the city center for some lunch or a dinner. A very nice place, which I hadn't been to, but I went back recently, is Cascina Cucagna. And this is also a really beautiful example of the proximity from the city of Milan and its agricultural hinterland, like they call this here, because Cascina is the northern Italian word for farm. So this used to be a farm only 20 minutes on foot away from the Piazza del Duomo. And this is now transformed into a cultural center, but they also have a really nice restaurant in which they use local ingredients and they make really, really nice dishes for fair prices. Besides having good food, it's also a really nice atmosphere. So in summer, you sit there outside in their garden, etc. So it's a really nice place to enjoy a good meal.
You told me that one, and I went there, and it was excellent. I loved it. It was a while ago, but I do still remember it was excellent.
Yeah, I went back there just a month ago, and they still have the same chef, but he's still doing a good job. So, yeah.
It's really interesting to go somewhere that's been, it's still a part of a cultural hub. I think sometimes in a big city you don't see that so much, but it's really nice to see that, people are gathering in this one space and there's a delightful restaurant where you can get really delicious food as well.
Yeah, and I think also it's really important in Italy because what I learned from after 12 years of living in Italy, people here are really social. Even though they say that the Milanese people are always in a hurry, they are arrogant, etc. But still, there's lots of people who work as a volunteer or who contribute in one way or another to charity projects, etc. So that's nice to be kind of part of it or see it from close by what happens in the Italian cities.
Yeah.
There's another really nice restaurant which has the same goal. So they are using mainly local ingredients, seasonal ingredients, of course. Most of it is vegetarian, but if they use meat or fish, they use good quality products. And it's called Dispensa Degustazione e Ristoro. And it's very close to Porta Garibaldi. It's a restaurant that opened only a few years ago, just before the pandemic, I think. But then, of course, they had to close down during the lockdowns. It's, again, part of a building which used to be the Casa degli Artisti, so the house of the artists. And they still have artists in residences over there. They have an exhibition space. They have a small bottega, so you can buy products over there. They organize irregularly markets, farmers markets, and they have a really nice restaurant, also them with a really nice outdoor space surrounded by green.
Yeah, I mean, Milan has got, we're kind of, if you were to do a comparison, it's not really a comparison, but like Milan would be like the New York, I would say, of Italy.
Smaller scale, but might be.
It's got more of that international sort of vibe and people are innovating traditional things.
Exactly.
Which, as I said, I find really exciting actually in Italy. That's my favourite part about Italians and Italy is a lot of people are entranced by the history, which I am too, but I think that it gets really exciting when they combine their tradition with technology and they come up with something pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with this.
Now, did you have some bakeries that you wanted to mention? Because we're all about the pastry here.
Exactly. Well, not only pastry, but also very, very nice bread. Because like 5 or 10 years ago, there was this new bakery. He is called Davide Longoni, and he's kind of the grandfather, even though he's not that old. Sorry, Davide, if you're listening. Of many, of a new generation of bakers, people making bread, sourdough bread, high quality ingredients again, so really selected the flour at the farm, usually locally or at least Italian ingredients, organic, and also whole meal.
Whole grain?
Whole grain, yeah, a whole grain flour in order to get also a quality bread. And there's a different in the city of Milan. One of them is really nice because it's run by a lady, and it's called Le Polveri. They have a small bakery near the Navili area, which is also worth a visit, actually, if you like to go for a drink or a dinner, because it's a big canal, and along the canal there's lots of restaurants and lots of bars. There's also a lot of tourism, so don't expect to be the only one over there, but you can find some hidden gems there as well. But not far from that area, you have one of the two stores of Le Polveri. And then they have a second bakery a little bit more on the outside of the center, on the southwestern part of Milan, where you can also sit down. You can have a delicious breakfast there, of course, with the sweet pastry, the brioche, but also French-style croissant, etc. You can have lunch there, and I think they are even open for aperitivo, which, of course, is a very important part of the lifestyle of the Italians.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I think there's some exciting things going on with the younger generation, actually, isn't there? They're really taking the food culture to new heights and trying new different techniques, but taking the tradition with them too.
Yeah, and I also noticed there's another really nice bakery. It's called Forno di Lambrata. It's in the Lambrata neighborhood on the east side of the city center. And this guy, he was actually working as a financial guy in London. And he got sick of working 60 hours weeks. So he decided to reinvent himself, and he wanted to come back to Italy because maybe it's known, but many young Italians go abroad because they think there's better perspective for them, better salaries, better work hours, etc. But then at some point they realized that Italy is also a very nice country to live in. So they have to find a way to reinvent themselves. And then, well, some of them choose to become a baker, for example. So it's really nice to see also the flexibility of the Italians. I think maybe they started to study, they kind of follow their dreams of themselves, or maybe slightly also the dreams of their parents, to have a nice job, to be able to work abroad, etc. And then at some point I realized that money isn't everything. So maybe it's better to do something with your passion.
You know what I always think when I go to Italy, and I was thinking a lot about this recently, is there's so many people worried about artificial intelligence and bots and all of those type of things. And I just think, well, if you're worried about that, just take a visit to Italy because, I just feel like they're not going to be fast adopters of that technology. They're quite happy to, live their life and not, become as fast-paced as perhaps we do in particularly English-speaking countries. Everyone's, on the go all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like if they saw a robot coming at them, they'd probably just kick it. Like they wouldn't like any of this technology too much. And I think that's some of the charm. Even in a super modern city like Milan, they've still got those traditions and they still hold close to them the past and the traditions and the culture rather than, blindly adopting everything that's new.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice that they are inefficient. It's just an advantage.
It's frustrating, but that's why we love it.
It's part of the experience.
It is. It's the frustrating charm of Italy, I think. Yeah. I have a question for you. Could you tell us what's your favourite way to spend a day in Milan? If you had one to yourself without your children, just if you had a day all to yourself, imagine the scene. What would you do?
Well, I think, first of all, I would go for a nice breakfast. And actually, I don't go far away from my house. I live on the northeast side of the city center in an area which is called Nolo, north of Loreto. And they are trying, of course, to change this area into a more popular area. There is a really nice pastry store as well. It's called Fola. They have great coffee roasted in the city of Milan. So I would go there, first of all, for a nice, easy breakfast with an espresso I usually take for breakfast and a nice croissant. Maybe I read even a book or take a newspaper to relax.
Piano. Nice and slow.
Definitely. Then I would hop on my bike because I'm Dutch. So I'm moving around the city on my bike, which is actually fine. I mean, Milan is a flat city. The infrastructure isn't yet completely adapted to bikes. but if you know where to take care of, it's a perfect way to go around. And also, I think one of the fastest way to go around, because you never get stuck in traffic and you can park your bike everywhere you want to park it.
But you're Dutch. You're used to it.
Sorry, I'm Dutch, yeah. I would cycle past the Bosco Vertigale and the beautiful park, which is there. It's called Biblioteca degli Alberi. It's a really contemporary park, but very, very beautiful and very well maintained. Have a walk around the Orto Botanico. And then I either visit or the Pinacoteca di Brera, because it's such a big museum that I haven't been able to concentrate myself on all the paintings. So it's really worth to go there more than once. Or I would visit the Museo del Novecento, which is the museum next to the Duomo, and it holds art from the 20th century. And it has a very important collection of art from the Futurists, who is a movement coming from the city of Milan and who was mainly important in Italy in the last century. So, yeah, this is really what I like to do. Then for lunch, I might have a pasta, even though it's not a very... Well, you can eat it everywhere, of course, in Milan, but traditionally it's not coming from the city of Milan. But there are some nice places where they make good fresh pasta at fair prices. And then in the afternoon, I think I would just walk around. I might go to the Cinque Vie area, the 5 streets, if you translate it literally, which is similar to Brera. Brera is very well known, and it's also, in a nice way, touristic. Cinque Vie is less discovered, so it's more quiet, but you have art galleries, you have some very nice courtyards in which you can have a look. There are some smaller stores and there are some bars as well. And what I think is really interesting about this neighborhood is that there's both some remainders of the Roman Empire. I like to emphasize remainders because it's really the leftovers. You can't see any buildings anymore. And also some architecture from the fascist period, which of course was a really difficult period in Italy because it was also the start of the Second World War. But as an architect, I kind of appreciate some of their buildings, the rational architecture. So yeah, I would study them a little bit more close.
That sounds amazing. I love it.
You like to come with me? The children are not there, so...
Of course, because you should always choose some great places to eat. So everyone, if you want all the notes on this, we're going to put them in the show notes, so don't worry, because there are some complicated Italian names there. But actually, Inge and I had a really nice lunch somewhere that you might not think would be good, but it's actually really good, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. Well, I brought Katy to the Milano Centrale, Mercato Centrale. So it's on the central station, ground floor on the west side of the huge station building, which is worth a visit as well if you're into architecture. And it's a really nice, let's call it a food court, even though maybe it doesn't really cover the explanation of this building. It has about 20 stalls of different producers, both local producers like Davide Longoni, the bakery I mentioned before. They have locally brewed beer from the Birrificio Lambrata, but they also have some Asian food stalls, or you can eat fish, etc. You can order wherever you want and then find a place to enjoy it, actually. And it's really nice because it's attached to the central station, so it's the perfect place to have a break before taking the train or when you just arrived in the city of Milan.
We had tried this sort of like a risotto cake, wasn't it? And it was really delicious. I'm thinking about that now. I'm hungry. It's nearly dinner time for me. Oh, Inge, I love hearing about all these secret places in Milan. And in fact, I hadn't heard of so many of them. And I really do need to get back to Milan very soon, I think. I really do enjoy my time that's spent there. You really need to work a little bit harder there to uncover some of these amazing places, but it's so worth it. And, some of the bars they have and the design of the coffee shops and the attention to detail just on how they make their pastries is just it's amazing. So, Inge, if our listeners want to connect with you and learn more about all of the secrets of Milan and access the Secret City Trails game or even book in for a tour with you, how can they do that?
Let's start with the Secret City Trails we mentioned during this discussion. The Secret City Trails are available on the website, secretcitytrails.com. You just select the city. We are not only present in Milan, but in 55 other European cities. All trails can be played in English, and they may usually also have another language, the local language, or in case of the Milan, Como, and Bellagio one, also in Dutch, of course. But I'm not sure if this really helps you out. This is one way, very easy, low priced. You can buy it and can immediately start it. And I promise you, you really get to places which are unknown even by the Milanese people. Then if you really want to connect with me, you can connect with me through my own website. Again, this one is mainly focused on the Dutch people, but it's called Milan Met Local. Just get in touch with me if you're interested in a tour or if you want to have some more information on the city of Milan. I'll try to help you.
Inge is very generous, and she also does an amazing tour. Like, I really appreciate the attention to detail. I remember going past the canals and understanding a little bit more about the canals of Milan with Inge, as well as trying lots of yummy food. It's a really interesting combination of history and food and culture and, the architecture and everything. It's just, wonderful. And I was so thrilled that you got in touch and that we were able to have lunch so recently. So grazie, Inge. Thanks for joining us on Untold Italy.
Thank you very much, Katy, for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, no problem. I hope to see you again in Milan very soon.
Thanks, Katy. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Wow, I'm so itching to get back to Milan now. I just had a flying visit for lunch with Inge after a few days on Lake Como recently, and I realised just how much I missed it. For me, Milan is a very grown-up city, although as Inge has children of her own, no doubt she's got a few ideas of how to spend family time there. Anyway, as I was saying, Milan is sophisticated and fun, from the galleries, shops and design focus, plus all the great restaurants and bars. And it's the type of place to spend a few days exploring secrets and hidden nooks. I was quite partial to doing that when we used to live in London. I really do love visiting Milan. Of course, we put all the places Inge mentioned, as well as the details of the Secret City Trails games and her website, into the show notes at untolditaly.com/232. for episode number 232. Grazie mille. Thanks for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. We truly appreciate all of you, our listeners, joining us from around the world, including the Netherlands. Hello to you all. We'd love it if you help spread the word so we can reach more Italy-loving travellers just like you. And the best way you can do this is by leaving us a rating or review. Hopefully it's 5-star in your favourite podcast app, or forwarding this episode onto a friend who also loves Italy's magnificent cities like Milano. Next episode, we're headed back to Puglia to talk about its amazing food culture. But until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.